All right. Chris, I am so excited to have you on the Forget Perfect leadership interview. Everyone who's watching, I just want to introduce you to Chris Johnson. He's a leader in the equity, inclusion, and community engagement space. So, Chris, welcome.
Well, Vitaly, first of all, thank you for the welcome. I should say to you more, it's probably more important that I say, I am like super excited to have a conversation with you. You know, we were talking before how much I love you, Vitaly, and the work that you do. And so when you asked me to be a part of this, I had to jump at the opportunity. So let's do it. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm excited too. All right. So, let's just start in the beginning. So, tell me a little bit about yourself and your
Yeah.
leadership journey.
So I often say this to people, I am someone who was often told for years and years and years about what I couldn't do, about what I couldn't be, about what I shouldn't aspire to do and be and to lead, you know. And so I say that as context to say I'm someone who has been enormously blessed with opportunity because people poured into me,
Yeah.
because people cared about my journey, because people stood up for me and spoke up for me, even when I maybe didn't deserve it. And so, for me as a leader, so much of what I do now, I do that, I do it with that in mind, if that makes sense. I do it
Yeah.
understanding that, there are lots of people out there who deserve to have a voice, who may not have enough of a voice in the way that I felt like that applied to me years ago. And so, anyway, that's a long answer to your question to say I'm somebody who's tremendously blessed, has been tremendously blessed over the years, and I'm trying to do the best I can to pay that forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what does the term leadership mean to you?
Oh gosh, you know, leadership has a formal definition. I
Yeah.
know that, but that for me, I think I'd say leadership is all about impact. It
Yeah.
means it's all about impact. It's all about empowerment. It's all about making sure that we take care of people, that we recognize the strength and the power in people, and that we elevate them no matter where they are and who they
Yeah.
are or what they look like and where they come from. That's been
Right.
the crux of my career and what I've done over the course of more years than I care to admit at this point.
Yeah.
So for me, leadership is all about, really, it is all about people.
Yeah. Yeah. Most definitely. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about leadership?
How much time do we have? No, there are lots. I think for me growing up, I viewed leadership as equating it with power and
Yeah.
influence, and how loud can I speak, and how much can I speak, and so I say that to say, some of those misconceptions I think still creep its way into corporate spaces, into community spaces, even in terms of how we view leadership. My experience has taught me leadership is not how loud we speak. Leadership is not, being a
Right.
bull in a china shop. Leadership isn't, how much we know even. It's about how much we can help people, bring people along on a similar journey or towards a shared goal, or towards a shared North Star, as I often call it. That's what
Yeah.
leadership is to me. It's less about what you know and how loud you say it or how much you speak in a meeting. And
Yeah.
candidly, I see some of that even now still.
Yeah.
And so I think those are misconceptions, certainly, and to the extent possible, I want to try to influence how we think about it differently.
Yeah. And I know there's a book titled this, but I agree with it. I believe leadership is everyone's business. I believe even
Mm,
individual contributors are leaders,
that's
right?
right.
They're just lateral leaders, right? If you're in customer service, you're
Hmm.
leading the clients and the customers that are calling. You're leading your peers, you're leading outside vendors. So I'm a big believer that, like, I really struggle with the leadership versus management, because I actually
Mm,
believe everyone is a leader. Doesn't
that's
mean
right.
you're a good leader, but I think that everyone
Yeah, yeah.
is
I
a
think
leader.
it's
I think leadership's everyone's business.
sorry, I stepped on you. I could not agree with you more. One of the things I think people will tell you if they've heard me speak, if they've heard, been involved
Yeah.
in anything I've had the opportunity to influence, I often say this is about all of us. We're having a conversation about leadership
Right.
right now, but I could apply that to so many things, particularly as it relates to community engagement or outreach or inclusion broadly. It's about all of us, and
Right.
all of us have a voice, and all of us have a role to play. So I could not agree with you more. Leadership is not about the title. That's another one of those misconceptions maybe that's still
Right.
out there. It's not about the title, to your point. It's all of us, no matter what the role is, no matter how we contribute,
Right.
we all lead in some way. So I love that. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like organizations that are very hierarchical and, like, and I know that, again, especially in big organizations, you have to have a way to differentiate in different levels.
Sure.
But I think, again, title aside, like everyone's a leader.
Yep. Yeah. Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah. How do you feel like you incorporate both ambition and humility into your leadership style, or even just your way of living? Like, this is
Yeah.
something that I, and feel like I'm constantly trying to check myself.
Oh my gosh, I don't do it well. I'll just be transparent in saying that. I mean, I think there's this natural kind of push and pull or conflict in some ways with
Right.
ambition and with humility. And so for me, I said this earlier, and I believe it. You know, I am who I am because of so many other people. It isn't about Chris. No
Right.
matter what I do, no matter what leadership role I've held, I believe this to be true, and I hope other people will tell you that. This ain't about me. It ain't about me.
Right.
And so if you do that, and I tell myself that literally every day, you know, doesn't necessarily matter what I think or what I want. It matters what's best for the people. It matters what's best for the organizations that we're serving. It matters what's best for the communities that we're blessed to be a part of.
Yeah.
I think that can help in so many ways to kind of mitigate that conflict between, like you say, ambition and humility. But you know, if I'm being candid with you, I don't know that I do it all that well. I try. What do you do? How do you do it?
It's one thing I'm really working on. I saw this, I posted about this on LinkedIn, but I saw this video from Adam Grant, and it just really impacted me. And he said, it's no longer about ability anymore in the workplace. It's about agility.
Yep.
He was
Yep.
like, and he's like, ability is your skills, your potential, your experience. Agility is about your ability to admit that you made a mistake, that you're wrong, that being open to feedback. And when you're a perfectionist, you can't be agile. Right? Like, it's hard to admit that you're wrong because it's like, oh, it's just so shameful, or it's hard to be resilient. And so I feel like really I'm trying to lean into this, that this kind of like being agile with my emotions, being agile with my thoughts, right? Like, I actually don't know everything. Not that I think I do, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there are certain circumstances, like, and so I'm really trying to work on that in terms of being more humble,
But
right?
you know what?
My perfectionism humbles me, I feel like, every day.
You
But
and me both.
I'm trying to embrace that. Like, just like, it really just spoke to me. I was like, gosh, I really need to lean into being more
I
agile.
know. And Adam Grant's one of those people that I respect so much in leadership spaces, you know, and I agree with that. The agility piece of this is so key. And it does sort of run contrary to those of us, you know, in these spaces, that the folks that are listening that are perfectionists, you know, it does sort of run contrary. It's hard, but it's a muscle. It's like this. You know me fairly well. You know, I tend to, I'm a workout guy, not as much as I used to be, probably not as much as I should, but I you know, liken this conversation we're having now to building muscle, and it's about repeated acts and doing this thing over and over and over. And so I respect what you said about leaning in, and I would say to you, Tally, it's a process, it's a journey. You got to build that muscle, you know.
Yeah. So I feel like that's the stage of like personal and professional development I'm in, and I feel like I'm entering that too, so that I can teach others.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I feel like everything we're going through is so that we can help others on the journey. And I'm like, thank you, God, even though this is really painful. Thank you.
Yeah,
For this experience that I'll be able to use as an example.
Even though we don't know what the end's going to look like, right? We don't know what the end's going to look like, or how, you know, how it's going to sort of shake out in the wash. I love that about you, Vitaly. It's that transparency, it's that authenticity that I think is going to help you along that journey. And you are, I'm saying this now to everybody that's listening, you are doing so much good work to help other people. I mean that.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
and so even this conversation and what you're willing to say and admit on this platform and all your other platforms, you're doing great work. So, all right, let me stop.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that.
Of course.
How do you feel like, you just said you're big into working out? Like, how do you feel like you manage stress to maintain your well-being and your leadership role?
Well, I mean, I think part of, I don't, you know, say the workout piece to brag. Trust me. Trust me. It's more about what you just got to, or what you spoke to. It's around how it helps me to manage through all of the stuff. I almost said a different word. All of the stuff that we're dealing with, you know, that flies at us as leaders, as people every single day. you know, the personal and the professional kinds of challenges that I know you know a lot about. And so for me, you know, the wellness, the well-being piece of it, that's a lot of, you know, the working out piece is a lot of how I deal with that. But the other piece of it too, honestly, is having these transparent and candid conversations with
Yeah.
good people like you and others that help me to know that I'm not on this island by myself. That
Yep.
all of us in some ways are dealing with the same or similar challenges. You know, people often say we're much more alike than we are different. I believe that to be true, particularly in conversations and spaces like this. And so I get so much help and so much benefit and so much energy and so much, you know, candidly helps me to continue to be resilient through these kinds of conversations and
Right.
bouncing ideas and thoughts and right or wrong answers, often wrong answers. In my case, you know,
Right.
in terms of how to deal with this stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think like one of the things I'm trying to lean into is really blocking off space every month, multiple times a month for strategic thinking time.
Mm,
Like I've been leaning into like teaching people to like have professional downtime.
yeah.
So not just downtime on your weekend or after work hours, but like
Mm-hmm.
blocking off 2 hours twice a month, right? Let's start, you know, and protecting it. The hard thing for me is the boundaries around it. Cause like I'll have this, oh, it's like my only open block and people are trying
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, really need to schedule something. And
Mm-hmm.
then won't respect my boundaries around my strategic thinking time. But I feel like when I do have that time, I'm a better decision maker.
I agree.
I'm
I
more
love that.
thoughtful. I don't
Mhm.
question myself. So I just feel like I have more space. So
You
that's one
may
of the
have
things I need to work on.
you may have just coined something. You're onto something. What did you say? Professional downtime? Seriously.
Yes,
I mean, I
professional
try to
downtime.
do like even in my calendar, for example, people
Yeah,
what you just said resonates because people are constantly trying to get at me and I recognize
yeah,
that again, that's not about me. Some of that's just more about the role, you know, I
yeah.
get that. But I have blocked out what I call, what is it called? I think Microsoft calls it focus time, I think, something
Yes,
like that.
yeah.
And so I try to be intentional during the day on that. That's just in some ways to be able to get stuff done in some ways. But it is, I think hearing you call it professional downtime, sometimes maybe that's what I'm looking for too. Is it's a moment to be able to breathe and to think and to do without having some of those outside noises and people trying to get at us. I love that. I think you're onto something,
Thanks.
honestly,
Maybe I'll
and
post about it today.
you
Well,
should.
I took a Harvard class in September. It was a 2 day class on culture change.
Mm,
And what I loved the most about it was like I got to be a student again.
yeah,
You know, like
yeah,
I'm always a teacher. I don't believe I have all the answers, but that's just my role, right? I facilitate, I'm
yep,
speaking,
yep.
I'm leading. And so it was so good to be like a student again. And like we had all these homework, like these articles that we needed to read on culture change and trust building and psychological safety, all these things. And it was like so powerful. It was like, gosh, like I need to be much more disciplined
Yeah.
about building in like reading time, but also downtime where I'm not reading. Like I'm just thinking, you know, I think it's one of the most critical things for uh, high
Hmm.
potential, high impact, and high achieving leaders, and we
Yeah.
don't do it.
Yeah. But you know what? I think I bet if all the people that are going to be listening to this, and we're going to be hoping that it's going to be tons of people that are listening to this.
Yeah, very
I think,
popular, Chris.
oh, well, I don't know about that. I bet if you gave them some, what my grandmother used to call truth serum, I think they
Yeah,
would tell you the same thing. Like it's you know, it's we, so much of what, you know, constitutes success or typical definitions of success, it revolves around being busy, revolves around, you know,
yeah,
doing and instead of taking time, to your point, to learn and to just sit back and be a student and absorb, you know, that obviously is going to help us be better leaders and better people and better, you know, influencers, you know, along the way. But we don't take enough time to do it. And
right.
in a lot of ways, it's not encouraged by our workplaces and spaces. And so I think, like I say, if people are honest, I bet people would love to be able to do more of what you just said you did. I know I would.
Yeah, I mean, we would just be more innovative,
Yep.
more decisive, discerning, all of those things.
That's right. Agree.
Um, yeah. So obviously the workplace is constantly evolving. There's always new trends and all of
Yeah.
that. But what do you think are some of the most critical skills right now for leaders?
Oh, you know, we talked about one of those just a minute ago around being agile.
Yep.
And I think for leaders now in spaces that, as you pointed out, continue to evolve, where the skill is not as important, in other words, the knowledge, maybe say it that way. The knowledge is not as important as being able to react to all the stuff that happens around us that is predicated, that skill of agility is paramount then. And so I think for up and coming leaders, or for those of us who are continuing to learn and evolve on our leadership journey like me, I think it's being comfortable with having to be agile, if that makes sense. That's one. And we talked about that. Two, I think, and I was sort of leading into this, it's being comfortable not knowing, being comfortable. You've heard this phrase of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm struggling to get it out. I think leaning into that is important too, and that's an important skill. That's maybe in some ways underrated, at least in my experience. It's that being able to accept that maybe I don't know, and the fear or the anxiety even that comes with that. I'm preaching to myself on this one.
Right.
Being able to accept that and live in that and know that that's not going to be permanent, and know that that's a part of who all of us are as leaders and as people. I think that's an important skill too. The other thing I would say, so we talked about agility, we talked about being uncomfortable and not knowing the answers. The other thing that's really important too for leaders now is really leaning into seeing people as people, not people as resources, not people as game pieces to move on a board somewhere, but seeing them as people, and understanding that all of us bring a uniqueness, to our day and to our workplaces and to the spaces that we influence, and trying to be able to, or being able to navigate around that, or navigate through that, or leverage that uniqueness to help to build an even more effective organization. I think that's key too.
What was interesting in the Harvard class, like the belief was that like people are not your greatest resource, people are the source.
Love it.
So that's along, people are the source. They're not your greatest resource, they are the source. And so if you believe that, what does your culture look like? What do your systems, policies look like? I also think like not trends, but I think like what I'm seeing is more important is strategic thinking. From roles that may not be strategic thinking roles, like even individual contributors need to be strategically thinking to some degree. So teaching that, because especially when you're a natural strategic thinker, it may not, it can be like, how do I teach this? I think
it's hard to do.
So important. And then I think one thing that people have been sleeping on is peer-to-peer relationships and investing in them. Like, as I've been like thinking about my clients and some of the things that they're struggling with the most is, as a leader, you manage up and you manage down, lead up, lead down. But like, yes, you'll have meetings with your peers and the other directors or the other VPs, but like, I think people sleep on those relationships, right? They don't invest, or there's some tensions, they avoid it. Like those relationships are critical for systematic change.
You're right.
Coming together and moving, getting initiatives, pushed forward in a timely manner, making new decisions. So I feel like that is going to start being a bigger trend, is the peer-to-peer relationships.
I think you are absolutely right. I co-sign literally everything you just said. I'm gonna say it a little bit differently. Just speaking my language. People are gonna people. Sometimes people can be hard to deal with, and so I feel totally okay in saying that. But I would also say, having said that, I would also again co-sign what you just said. We've got to learn that peer-to-peer kind of engagement, and that peer-to-peer being able to work through and around and with our peers is critical to any sort of success, both personally for what's important, for our own personal measures of success, but also for the organizations, the systems, the people that we lead. You mentioned, getting stuff done. You said it differently. I'm saying it this way. To get stuff done, we got to be able to manage through and work with people of all stripes, our peers, our leaders, and those who may also be differently situated in the organization. So I think you're absolutely right. I wonder, even in some of the engagements that you have and the trainings that you do and the speaking that you do you feel like that people recognize that peer-to-peer challenge, and more importantly, do they recognize it, and how are they addressing it, I guess?
It's been a common theme in like some of my one-on-one leadership coaching, that people are in new positions and they're like, oh my gosh, like they're just getting, and I'm like, we've got to build peer relationships. So I think like people are waking up to it, but I'm realizing that now that there's such a deficit of that, in organizations. Like people aren't taught to build peer-to-peer relationships. It's like, oh, well, they're adults. They should know
Sure. Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they're doing. And then also they're not on your P&L. They're, you know,
That too.
they're not on your P&L. They're
Yeah.
not like you're not responsible for their performance, but they impact your performance in a really major way. And
You know
so,
what? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
no. Well, and I think too, like, because we're already time strapped,
Yeah.
it's like, what? Now you want me to like go to coffee with Bob in accounting?
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know, but it's like, yeah, I do want you to
yeah.
go to coffee or ask how his mom's surgery went, or I don't know, like check in on people, like make deposits into the relationship bank
That's
account.
right.
Like relationships are the currency in which you get things done.
There it is. There it is.
And if you do not invest in them, good luck.
You know,
Best of luck.
it has so many tentacles and connections to
Right.
what I often talk about in terms of creating an inclusive culture and a culture where people feel like that they can belong, they feel like they matter, they feel like they're valued. So much of that is dependent on, in my mind, how we interact with and engage with and appreciate our peers and those relationships that you're talking about building. And so there's so many tentacles here. And I love what you just said. And again, I'm gonna say it differently. To be able to get stuff done, you gotta work with everybody. And sometimes it does take that, it means taking that time out for coffee when maybe you don't think you have time or don't think you can fit it into your calendar. I think you're right. I think you're right.
Well, and I think it comes down to, you know, the senior team believing that it's important.
Yep.
You know, like
Definitely.
making it mandatory that people block time for that, incentivizing that. Like this is part of trust and psychological safety. You know, like even metrics around that. Like some trust metrics could be how many peer-to-peer, you know, contacts did you have this month? Like that could be a trust metric.
You're telling people too much. You better trademark that first.
I know this is like a free training, y'all. I'm gonna keep everything else a secret. You got to pay me otherwise. I'm just kidding.
But look, but no. I say that that's my way of co-signing what you just said. Like measuring it, incentivizing is the word you used. That is critical to helping everybody understand how important this stuff is. And so to your point, you know, so much of this, I was going to make this point, you know, later is the senior leadership has to buy in well. And some of that buy-in is it has to be done just through voicing it. And some of that buy-in has to be demonstrated through what we measure, like you just said.
Yeah. All right. So, you know, I do a lot of work in the perfectionism space and teaching leaders to overcome it and cultures to overcome it. How do you think perfectionism has held you back or impacted you?
Sorry, I shouldn't chuckle. I chuckle only because it's something, if I'm being transparent, it's just you and me here, right? Wink, wink. This notion of perfectionism, I have not figured it out. I don't know. If I'm being candid, from a day-to-day standpoint, I don't always know what to do. It in some ways has been paralyzing for me.
Yeah.
You know, now I obviously, you know, have overcome it in fits and starts in certain spaces, but it rears its head almost daily, you know, and some of that comes from, you know, you heard me talk about at the beginning of this, where I come from and the people that told me that I couldn't do whatever it was I wanted to do.
Right.
You understand how much pressure that puts on a kid, you know, and how much that sort of seeps into our being. And I didn't understand until I got, you know, past 40 years old, you know, how much the stuff that we hear when we're young, how much that still can show up even, you know, 20, 30, 40 years later. And so where am I going with that? What does that mean? I'm saying to you, the words that people spoke very early on to me still rear their heads today. And it shows up in feeling like I have to do everything right. I have to do everything perfectly. And then when I do make a mistake, that, you know, I got to minimize how many people know it. And this is, oh Lord, I'm going to get fired or whatever it is, you know, so I know I'm not really answering your question because I don't have a perfect answer yet. What I will say is that it's a journey every single day. It's a conversation I have to have with myself every single day, and a conversation I have to have with good people like you and others in this space to help to navigate through what can be pretty paralyzing, at least for me.
Yep. I'll have to see if I can have like an open training on overcoming perfectionism and invite you, Chris, because I think that you'd love to.
You know, I'm there. Whatever you do,
and you know, I teach it because I need it the most. So it's not like I'm up there being like, I got this stuff figured out. I'm like, I'm turning the volume down on my perfectionism, and that's the goal, right? Like this perfectionism stuff is so deeply embedded for you. It was all these people telling you can't, you can't be what you want to be, and all these reasons why you can't, you can't follow your dreams or pursue whatever you want to pursue. And and telling you what's not possible for you.
Well, and then added to that too, Vitaly, I appreciate you saying that. There are so many others who I grew up with and around who, quite frankly, have you know, through some of the choices they made and other circumstances or reasons have not done, you know, stereotypically what you would consider well. I mean, we can make an argument, you can have a conversation about what that means, but I would just say you've seen, I would say it this way, you see sometimes the results of bad decisions or decisions that can go awry or you know, not thinking through or not doing things the right way. And so that also adds, my point is that also adds a layer of pressure and around doing it right and doing it right the first time, you know, that just really, it just isn't realistic. It just isn't realistic. And so, like I say, it's a constant conversation and I haven't figured it out. When you figure it out, you let me know, or we're gonna figure it out together.
I've got lots of tools. We'll have to have a separate call.
Let's do it.
I've also been thinking about I have a women's leadership group that I do. It's 4 weeks around perfectionism. And I've been thinking about a men's group because it's like, it's a different level.
Yeah.
Perfectionism shows up differently for men and women.
Can I tell you how impactful that would be? You just
I
heard me
think it
talk
would be
about what I
really
struggle with.
impactful.
You just heard me talk about how much I struggle with it, and I think having transparent conversations among men, obviously led by you who's in this space, I think, and you and others, obviously, I think that would be that could be transformative in this space. I really do.
Well, because I also think we're in a place where there's like not a lot of space for men to talk about what they're going through. There's, you know, like there's spaces for women and women of color, and you know, like, but there's not a lot of space for men to talk about some of the things that they're struggling with, and I think at some point it's gonna need to be addressed.
Well, let me just acknowledge.
We're going in so many different ways.
I mean, I know. I was thinking about the list of questions, but anyway, that's okay. No, I love this. This is better, actually. Can I say something about what you just said? You just hit on something that I want to make sure and ring that bell even louder. We have to do better about cultivating spaces where men, all men, of all stripes, of all, you know, statuses, air quotes, have conversations about the challenges that they face. Be that perfectionism, be that, you know, fatherhood, be that, you know, anything. I think doing more around cultivating those kinds of spaces and those kinds of conversations, you heard me say earlier, can be transformative in so many ways. And so I just 100,000% agree with that. And you know, again, you're on to something, as you usually are. You're on to something.
God keeps nudging me in different ways.
I love it. Love it.
Maybe we'll do a trial like in January. Okay, I'll keep you posted. Anyway. Okay. This has been awesome. I've loved this call. So to close us off, like what's like one piece of advice that you would give leaders or aspiring leaders, or one of your favorite pieces of advice that you've received?
Yeah. So this question was so important. I actually wrote down an answer.
Okay.
I am a huge reader, voracious reader, which is so interesting. If you saw me when, you know, even 10 years ago, you'd think that wouldn't make any sense at all. And so there are like a couple people in the leadership space that I just love and adore. A few people. Stephen Covey is one of them. Brene Brown obviously is a hot name. Who else? Oh gosh, Simon Sinek is another who I take a lot from. But couple things in terms of advice and what I try to live, how I try to live my life, come from Stephen Covey. He uses this term called sharpen the saw, right? Which basically means take time for yourself.
Right.
Take care of yourself. Nurture your own physical and mental and spiritual well-being, right? Taking time for making sure that you are your best you so that you can be of the best and highest use to other people in your sphere of influence. So I think that is key. And we talk a lot about that throughout this conversation. It's making sure that we are having conversations, that we are vulnerable, that we're authentic enough to be able to acknowledge when we're struggling and create spaces where we can have conversations about how we do better. The other two things I'd say quickly are, Stephen Covey often says, put the first things first, right? You know, thinking about what's important versus what's urgent and creating space. You mentioned this in what you call professional, oh gosh, I forgot, professional downtime.
Professional downtime.
That's right. You know, creating opportunity to take care of what's important versus just being driven by what's urgent every single day. We all fall victim to that. I did that just this morning. And so it's a process. The last thing I would say, Vitaly, is making sure that we this is the inclusion guy in me, that we are empowering others, that we are taking time to pour into others. I'm saying this one more time, I am who I am because other people poured into me, other leaders poured into me, other people poured into me. And so I think one of the key pieces of advice around being effective as a leader, it's not so much about how much you accomplish and all the goals and things you checked off a task list. I think we also have to ask ourselves, how much have we poured into others and what effect have we had on them to help them to be their best selves?
Yeah, I love that. Awesome, Chris. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited for people to hear about this. I'm excited to re-listen to it myself. Yeah, we were like on fire there. It was awesome.
So Tally, I need to say this one more time. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for being a friend to me. Thank you for being a mentor to me and for the space that you created for this kind of conversation. I'm thrilled. I'll do it again whenever you ask me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Awesome.